Hi, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to my weekly podcast about spirituality, love, death, devotion, and waking up while living in a messy world. The Satsang with Shambhavi podcast is recorded live each week with students of our nonprofit community, Jayakula. For more information and to find out about attending a satsang, visit jayakula.org. Thanks for listening. Much love to you, wherever and however you are. So the word Darshan is most popularly used and known to us if we have any contact with traditions, spiritual traditions from India, which it's something that happens when you are with a teacher or you're in a temple or you're looking at a murti, a statue or a picture of a deity or a guru, and you look into the eyes of that teacher or that statue or that picture, and something happens. It's called you receive darshan. So it's almost used in the sense of sort of like a mini Shaktipat, where you receive some kind of possibility for a greater opening, or you have some kind of experience looking into the eyes of a statue, a picture, or a living person who has some realization. This is called getting darshan. And then you'll hear casually people say in India or even here, I'm going to such and such a temple because so-and-so is giving darshan, or I'm going to go meet this teacher who's giving darshan, or I'm going to go get darshan from Durga or Hanuman in the temple. And I think for your average person going to a temple in India, it really just means you're going to go look at the statue or you're going to go meet the teacher. It doesn't even necessarily mean that anything spectacular is going to happen, but it does mean sort of some kind of blessing or some kind of spiritual event, even if you just experience it as ordinary. But in the direct realization traditions, we go much more deeply into this word or the darshan, or even if we don't use darshan, even if we don't use that word, we're going to explore it in many different ways. So I actually just pulled some of the most pertinent meanings of darshan out of a Sanskrit dictionary online, and there was dozens of them, most of them related directly to the words that I'm going to tell you now. But so there's the most important, I think, aspect of darshan is twofold. One is that darshan is pretty much the same as the word towa, T-O-W-A in Tibetan, and it means view. And in the Indian traditions, particularly the direct realization traditions, view is the way that you see the world or the way that you experience things once you are more realized. And particularly in the direct realization traditions from all over the world, not just India, having view teachings, whether or not they're called that, are the most important teachings you can get from a teacher. So we could say that the teacher is giving you darshan when they're giving you view teachings, because those view teachings about cosmology and the meaning of what is the self, what is the purpose of human life, how do we come to be, how do we go out of being, the process of dying, why do we do sadhana, what's the result of sadhana, what's everything made out of. Those kinds of questions are all view teachings, and they're also what we are wanting to realize through our practice. So the teacher gives view teachings, and in the best possible circumstance, the view teachings are transmission teachings, which means that if you have that capacity and the teacher has that capacity, then you're able to have some experience of those view teachings directly simply by hearing them be talked about. So an example of this is if people come to teachings for the first few times and they have an experience of, I already knew all this. I'm hearing the things that I already knew, or I feel like I'm coming home to what I already knew. That's a very common experience of hearing the view if you're in the right teachings and with the right teacher for you. So the view or darshan, or tawa in Tibetan, is so important, first of all, because it fulfills the requirement of all direct realization traditions that you have a taste of the result of your practice before you begin to practice. So view teachings give you that beacon, that taste, that foreshadowing. It gives you this experiential foreshadowing of what you're going to realize for yourself through your practice. And then view teachings provide a container for your practice so that you know what universe you're in, what tradition you're in, what your tradition is, how your tradition is telling you to orient yourself to your practice when you sit down to do sadhana. So, for instance, if your tradition tells you that the purpose of practice is to achieve salvation so that you'll be taken up into heaven when you die, that's a view teaching. Every tradition has view, whether or not they call it that explicitly. If you have that view, or if you're practicing with more like the view from the direct realization traditions, that your view is to realize the natural state and just relax in that, and you don't have to go anywhere to do that, then when you sit down to do mantra or puja or kriya yoga or whatever you're doing, you're going to have a very different experience, a very different orientation to that, depending on what the view that you're coming to it with. So the view means something like the worldview or the philosophy, although I hate that word. It's from the Western traditions, obviously. It means love of knowledge, and it really has a different connotation than view. But we want to, in the Dzogchen tradition, it says that we learn the view, we hear the view, and we practice with the view, and then we realize the view, we embody the view. However, I just have to say, after having gone through that whole thing about view as darshan as view, that the ultimate teaching is that we do not hold any view. So I'm actually quoting from Machik Lapdrone, who was the Tibetan yogini and became a Dakini, who brought the practice of Chud into the human realm. And she had this very elaborate puja that involves feeding your body parts to other beings. And at the end of the description of the practice, which goes on for a few hundred pages, where she's giving view teachings of all this whole practice, elaborating in great detail. And at the end, she says, the ultimate chud is hold no view. Hold no view. So the view is actually a vehicle through which we can sort of jump off the cliff into hold no view eventually, where we're just being in the livingness of everything and view is not necessary. This view of no view is restated in the beginning of the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra in our tradition, where it says that all of the view teachings are child's play, only for those who are still ignorant. But they're necessary. But at the end of the day, at some point in your life or some other life, view teachings will be unnecessary because you will simply be living in such profound immersion in the wisdom of reality that view teachings will be completely unnecessary, or holding any view of anything will be completely unnecessary. So view teachings darshan is a teaching, is another meaning of the word darshan. So then view means not just seeing the deity or the teacher, but also being seen. So we often think, if we have any contact with these kinds of traditions, we often think of darshan as something we're getting, but it's also something we're giving. So it's reciprocal. And this is very, very important to understand, especially in the relationship of the teacher to the student, that the teacher is seeing you and you are also seeing the teacher. And this mutual process of seeing is really at the heart of the alchemy between teacher and student. Of course, when you're first starting out, or even in the later middle parts of your spiritual life, you aren't going to see the teacher or the deity, if you're doing deity practice, with the nuance or depth of how your teacher is seeing you, or how you're being seen by a deity. To whatever extent you're able to experience through that mutual reciprocal seeing your essence nature as being the same as the teachers, in any way you're able to experience unity or unison with that being, then you are fully experiencing darshan in those moments. That's really what it's about. What we are seeing ultimately is our real nature. And then, having seen that, darshan also means contemplating. We see and we are seen by everything, and then we remain or rest in a state of contemplation. And that state of contemplation is completely effortless. We're simply contemplating and enjoying. If you see the way a mother looks at the face of their child and the child looks back at the mother, it is something like that. In fact, in the Dzogchen tradition, the clear light, which is an experience of the natural state, is said to be the mother light. We don't call it that in Trika, but it's the mother light in that way of contemplating your original face through looking at the face of another is a very important way of talking about darshan. So if you think of the way that mothers and children look at each other, or fathers and children, there's just simply the enjoyment of gazing, right? It's not for anything other than that. When a parent is looking at a child, they're not thinking, I wonder what my child's thinking. I wonder what my child thinks of me. They're just enjoying that gazing process. And that's what contemplation is, contemplating your own nature as manifested in everything that appears to be external to you. So it also means showing, particularly in relationship with teachers. It's very important that you give darshan, even in that you show yourself, that you reveal yourself. And it's very important that the teacher reveal themselves to you also. And in that mutual process of revelation, the natural self can come into view. There's one meaning of darshan that I didn't know about when I read this list today, which is sacrifice, yagya. And what are we sacrificing when we are in a condition of real darshan? Is we're sacrificing all of our karmas. This is what we're always sacrificing. This is the real yagya, right? Is that we're all conditioning in that small moment, perhaps, or maybe it's not a small moment, when we're experiencing real darshan, when we're allowing ourselves to be seen, and we're allowing ourselves to see, and we're being seen, and whoever we're seeing is also allowing themselves to be seen. That is a sacrifice, right? It's a sacrifice of conditioning, but it's also a sacrifice in the sense of devotional. If we think about the Bhagavad Gita, where the basic form of the yagya is pouring self into self. So the pujari is pouring ghee into the fire, or whatever they're pouring into the fire, and both the pujari and the ghee and the fire are all, and the act of worship are all devotional. So in that real moment of darshan, there's this devotional pouring of self into self, emerging, and a recognition of unity. And finally, there's two meanings of darshan that relate to everything I just said. One is meeting, that we're truly meeting ourselves in everything. That is darshan. And then finally, presence. Not just seeing presence or contemplating presence, but embodying presence, in being immersed in presence, is also darshan. Because when we're immersed in presence, we have the real knowledge of the self. We have the real view, which is no view, when we're immersed in presence. That is the ultimate darshan. Simply to be immersed in presence is the ultimate darshan. We are then, it is equal to seeing, contemplating, enjoying the real nature of the self, or of reality, same thing.